Gavin knew his own loch. By mid-morning, the wind had fallen. The sun had come out in a glory of rainbows and was picking up the silver twists of the burns cascading down the rust-red hills. The fretted sea had turned from sullen grey to polished pewter, and there were enough blue chinks in the sky to make a Dutchman's trousers. We left Cat sleeping by the fire, took a picnic of scones and his mother's freshly made crowdie, like cream-textured salty cottage cheese, and scrunched off along the pebble shore. The tourist side, Gavin murmured, nodding across at the gravel track running above the opposite shore. Our going's a bit harder. He picked his way up a network of narrow paths to the height of the headland, then down again, until we came out at the boulders and were swinging along the shore, walking boots scrunching in time, breath smoking in the crisp air. The grass above the tide line was the yellow-green of newly gathered mermaid hairwood. The shore pebbles coloured like jewels, rose granite, milk quartz, green serpentine, mica glinting nice. The fronds of kelp just breaking the surface at the sea edge of the wide river were crinkled with ice. We threaded through an oak wood with mossed boulders between the trees. I could hear the waterfall now, like a distant drum roll. Then suddenly we came out to a polished basin brimming with black water and turbulent with zebra ripples of current in the centre. The still edges had comma shapes of coffee-coloured foam swirling around the sanded, smooth rock. The distant drum roll became a throbbing roar. "The bottom of the falls!" Gavin shouted in my ear and gestured me upwards. A clamber through heather stems, a twist in the path, and we were halfway up the great cascade, falling the height of a tall ship's mast from a twisted spout in the rock above us. The path was slippery with spray, but the rooted heather gave a grip underfoot, and the slender trees made good handholds. Half an hour of breathless climbing brought us to the top, beside the lochen that fed the river, with the cascade below us. We paused to unpack our picnic. "Though we'd better keep moving," Gavin said, glancing at the dark shadows on the hills. "Kenny said he'd pick us up from the Smuggler's Bay half an hour before dusk. We can eat as we go." He used the little dagger in his stocking to spread 2 scones each with crowdie, and we munched companionably as we sidestepped down to mid-hill level. The ice-hardened bracken crunched beneath our feet, and the air was cold and crisp. I was glad of my best sailing socks and gloves. Before us, a mile away on the hill, was the cave we were heading for, a dark mouth halfway up a rock face, with a thin ledge of heather as pathway. I was nervous about arriving there. Although we'd achieved a comfortable intimacy in these 5 days, the closest we'd been physically had been touching fingers as we hung up tree ornaments. At some point we were going to have to get closer. Part of me wanted to. I loved the way he moved, the economy of his hand gestures, the neat way his kilt pleats swirled as he turned. His brown hands were square in shape, hands made to work, yet delicate as a spider spinning a web when he was tying one of his tiny flies. At the same time, I was terrified. Convention was closing over me like cold, deep water. I could do swinging along the hill path like this, but there would be police functions, and he'd want children, and soon my unfettered life with Kalida's sails bent on, ready to take me where the wind blew, would be just a memory. And the bonny Prince's Cave, with Gavin's kingdom spread below us, would be a romantic place for a first kiss. We were halfway there when Gavin wrinkled his nose. "A dead deer," he said. So much for romance. I was getting the faint scent of it too, a sweet decay overlying the sharp frost, when he stopped dead with a shocked exclamation in Gaelic. His hand came up to hold me back. My feet halted obediently, but I couldn't help looking forward. I saw the skull first. It was lying in a hollow of dried bracken, below a grey lichened rock, with the sockets gazing straight at us below a mop of dark hair. The jaw was pushed sideways. The teeth grinned. Something that might have been an ear clung still to the dirty bone. The neat ribs, the spine and breastbone, lay in their pattern, tarnished with vestiges of black flesh. The shoulders were there, but the arms had been pulled away. There were foxes in these hills, and badgers, wildcats, ravens, golden eagles. One leg lay straight. The other kneecap was slightly raised above the dried fern ground, as if sinews still held it to the thigh. That foot was a jumble of gnawed bones. The smell came from the tangle of dried intestines within the rib cage, like blackened seaweed on a beach. Bile rose in my throat. I took a couple of steps back and choked the sickness down. Gavin retreated with me and reverted to D.I. McRae of the Inverness branch of Police Scotland. Scene of crime are going to be delighted with this. He took a handkerchief from his pocket and skewered it flat with bracken stems, a square signpost, then turned to give me a wry smile. Is it you, or I, or just the combination of the two of us that attracts murder?